Today, we're talking about how to set up and tweak your gimbal so you get the best performance and the best shots. Here we go. What's up, my creative friends? Thanks so much for coming back and joining me in a new episode. Today, we're talking about how to set up and to tweak your gimbal to get the best performance out of it. Now, I'm doing this with a brand new Moza Aircross gimbal from Goodson, but this will apply to other gimbals. The app, the interface may not be exactly the same, but the parameters are very similar, and hopefully this will help you to get the best performance out of your gimbal. So let's get into it. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole process on how to balance the camera on the gimbal. We're going to talk about the setup that I use, that I find comfortable when using this type of gimbal. We're also going to dive into the app and take a look at all the settings of each parameter and what they mean, and I'm going to show you the settings that I use to get the best performance from this type of gimbal. So first, let's start with the physical setup and how my gimbal is actually configured. So currently, I have the Sony a7S on it with a 24-105 lens. I found I really enjoy using the dual handle grip, and that's because I've come from other bigger gimbals in the past, and once you add those to this type of gimbal, it becomes easy to handle, and it's a dream to use. So I would really recommend using the dual handle grip. They feel really solid in the hand. It's really easy to set up, quick to take on and off, and it just adds so much more control to the gimbal and to the whole setup. The second thing I would add is definitely a monitor. What I'm going to be using is a small HD Focus 5-inch touchscreen monitor. There's a whole bunch of reasons why the small HD Focus is amazing in general as a monitor, especially with these type of gimbals where the back of the screen is kind of obstructed from the actual motor. It's really important to have a monitor that you can clearly see and you can clearly frame your shots and make sure that you are getting the type of shot that you want. I have this monitor attached on the side 1/4-20 mount to the gimbal using a friction arm, and I find that it just allows me to put it in the best position no matter which way or configuration I'm using the gimbal. Again, I'll put links into everything I'm using down below so you can check them out and see if it works for you. So once you have the dual handle grip on the monitor, you should be all set to go. The next thing you have to do is configure the gimbal and the motor settings within the Moza app or whichever app you're using, and this will tell the gimbal how much power to put to each motor and how it needs to react to the setup that you have on it. So let's jump into this app so I can give you an idea about some of the terms you might see when you're adjusting your gimbal. Once we're in the app, the first thing we're going to go to is the little cogwheel, and this is going to give us some options here, like the camera model. So of course we're going to go ahead and choose the Alpha, the Sony Alpha series. Now they have different profiles where you can store all these settings. So they have 1 to 4. So if you had different lenses or slightly different camera setups, you could store a different setup in each profile. So let's keep it on 4. This is the follow mode that it'll start with in this profile. And so there's yaw follow, pitch and yaw follow, all lock, or roll follow. So just a little quick background if you don't know what all these mean. Yaw would be similar to a pan. Pitch is similar to the tilt of the camera. That's tilt and pan. And all lock means all the axes are locked. And roll is just obviously the lateral roll of the camera. I like pitch and yaw to follow, so I'll keep it like that. So yaw is follow enabled, so that means if I rotate the camera or the handle side to side, it will follow it. Power output means is how much it needs to output to stabilize the camera. I've done a auto tune at the bottom here, so I've already kind of seen what I need. So I usually keep this on about 85. So dead angle means the angle at which you can move, that this will not initiate the follow movement. If you click on here, it'll say 2 degrees. So I can move 2 degrees before it starts initiating the yaw follow. If you increase this, as you can see, it's a little bit twitchy, but if you increase it, it'll take a bigger twist of the handle to start the camera movement. If I decrease it, it'll require almost no movement and the camera will start following. So I like a little bit of breathing room there. That's 2 degrees. It's nothing big, but it does give it a little bit of stability there. Now, I'm not 100%, but I think motion control is for the time lapse, and the smoothness is as it's moving when you're using the whole control from the phone. Manual positioning means you can actually grab a hold of the gimbal and turn it and then leave it in that position. So I have it off in the yaw because I just feel like I never need to do that, and the manual positioning sensitivity is at 4, which doesn't make a difference in this case because it's actually turned off. Pitch, so that would be similar to the tilt of the camera. So that's the side motor there. Follow is enabled, Power output is at 90. Again, I've done the auto calibrate, so this is what it sort of chose as that. Dead angle is 1. I don't usually want to have to tilt the gimbal so much to get a movement, so I just leave it at 1. Motion control is on. Motion control smoothness, I haven't touched that. The time lapse has come out fine. Manual positioning, that's on. So when I'm in a lock mode, I can actually use my hand to position it instead of using the joystick. And manual positioning sensitivity is at 5. Now my understanding of the sensitivity is if it's at 1, it takes very little, or if it's at 0, it takes very little to position the camera. The motor's release and it just moves in the direction that you want it. Whereas if it's higher up, if it's like the max, which is 10 I believe, then it's very hard for you to position it. The motors will resist you almost all the time. So I just keep it on something in the middle. I find it works. It doesn't jiggle, doesn't vibrate. There's no issues so far at having it that with this setup. Now your setup might vary. And the last one is roll. So roll is follow enable, means if you were to tilt the gimbal in the rolling motion, then it would follow. I usually turn that off because I don't need it in this particular setting. Power output is at 95. Again, that's what the gimbal had auto calibrated. Dead angle is at 0 because I don't use it. Most of these are going to be obsolete because I don't use it. Now manual positioning sensitivity, this is the one I had a problem with initially on the review. So I turned this one up and I found that now the roll is less likely to be affected by gimbal movements, or just if I'm going from upright mode to inverted mode, the roll axis won't get thrown off its level. Now this one's important. So follow speed. This is the speed at actually all those parameters we set up before, like the yaw and the pitch. This is the speed at which it'll follow those movements. So obviously a higher number means that it'll follow really quick. It'll be really, really jerky, and it'll just be super direct when you move it. If you pick a lower number, as you turn the gimbal, it'll kind of slowly ease into the motion. Or if you point it up, it'll slowly ease into that pitch motion. And it's just better that way because it just feels more cinematic. I mean, you don't want to have these jerky movements. You want to have precise control over it. And I think a low follow speed around this number really helps you dial it. Now, this is my preference. It might not be your preference. I don't mind it being slower. I find it's easy to control. So the control speed, this is the speed of the joystick. A lower number means when you click the joystick up, down, left, or right, it's going to move a lot slower. Now I keep it about 30. I don't use the joystick to make camera movements. I use the joystick more for positioning it and then creating the shot. Some people use the joystick to actually have the camera move from one position to another while they're shooting to create that movement. I just use the angle of the gimbal and the follow modes instead. So 30 is pretty fast. If you were going to do it with a manually thumb control the movements, you'd probably want to be somewhere around like 8 or 9. Auto tune is that's what I was talking about earlier, where it'll actually set the motor power outputs for all the angles depending on your camera. And then save parameters, I usually click that once we're done. You could reset all the parameters and you can do a factory reset. So that's it, guys. I hope that helped. If it did help you, please click that like button. Please don't forget to subscribe for new videos weekly, and I will see you back in the next one.